From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Kourosh Partow.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Robert and I'm here with my co-host KP and we are the Dog Driver Show. And today we have a dog driver calling in from Alaska. KP, who do we have?
Today we have Eddie Dayton with us. He's from Big Lake, Alaska. He runs Open Class, and he's been involved in the sled dog sport in Alaska for many, many years. Eddie, welcome to the show, and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your program.
Well, this is my life. This is all I've ever wanted to do since I was a kid. I started racing dogs. My parents had Siberian Huskies for show in California in 1968. Started running in the juniors and was hooked on the sport from an early age and knew this is what I was going to do. Moved to Alaska in 1981 to pursue racing in the Rendezvous North American and living the lifestyle.
So you've been involved with the sled dog sport for many decades, and throughout these years, what did you notice changing in our sport?
I've seen the sled dog itself evolve into different types of dogs several times. Mushers have changed, attitudes have changed. The sport to me has become a little, I say, vanilla. It used to be kind of really colorful, a lot of colorful characters, a lot of controversy, but with the rule changes and everything else, it's kind of settled down and, a little less exciting on the mushers and the personality point, but the dog teams and the dog care and everything has certainly improved quite a bit.
So do you think this, you mentioned the style of the dogs, they changed too. How do they look now compared to what they did 40-some years ago?
40-some years ago, we're dealing with mainly Huskies, long-coated dogs, a little squarer, kind of a flat-running dog instead of what we have right now, where the dogs have a much more flexible back and a lot better hip and shoulder rotations.
I know you.
Completely different. Yeah, it's a completely different dog than what we had, say, 30 years ago.
I know that you breed your own style of dogs and you have your own program. What is the background behind those dogs?
The background started out with Charlie Champagne, Gareth Wright, and Joey Reddington. I had dogs that I had bred. Then when Egil Ellis came up, I dragged my feet for the longest time, but after about 5 years, went to the dark side and started breeding in Ellis dogs into my group. I took 11 female Huskies and bred to a dog Stephen Biddle had that Jamie McGee left for me. So I bred all those dogs together and then took those 11 different bred Huskies and just kept crossing and inbreeding for the next 12 years until I had a specific head type of dog I was looking for. I was looking, early on I was taught by Roland Lombard that form follows function. So I was trying to breed a functional dog and not so concerned about form at that point. I was looking for a certain thought process in a dog, the way I interacted with them. And once I got that, I looked for my hybrid. Then I went to Joey Reddington about 5 years ago and picked up a male to breed into what I currently have now. So I went back to the Husky. My dogs now have pretty much all the positive attributes of the hounds, along with the coat and undercoat of the Husky. I no longer have to run my dogs in coats. I don't have the foot problems that I used to have. So I'm kind of on track for where I'm trying to get to now.
Eddie, how many dogs do you have in your kennel? Race dogs do you have in your kennel, and how big is your kennel?
My kennel consists of 80 dogs. What I have is I have 40 adults in training and racing. I have 20 yearlings that we're starting to work with at this point of the year, and then 20 pups and older dogs.
Having so many dogs in your kennel, how much work it is? For a lot of our listeners that are not familiar with the sled dog sport and they're just dog lovers, explain to us, having such large kennel, how many hours of work and dedication has to be behind it?
I'm pretty well 12 to 14 hours a day. It's everything from watering to picking up poop to feeding to actually dragging trails and running dogs. It's 12 to 14 hours a day.
You talked about feeding and watering the dogs. Tell us a little bit about your nutrition program and your diet and watering program. How do you organize that a day?
What I do is I feed Caribou Creek Gold, which I believe is probably the best dry food on the market. I put a 2-quart scoop in a 5-gallon bucket, soak that, and that's what they get for watering in the mornings. And then I add beef liver mix to a small amount of the kibble at night. And I also add psyllium, and that's my race diet.
That's fairly consistent diet through the whole race and training period, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about...
Yeah, my diet doesn't change, and in fact, I don't alter my diet for the entire kennel. Once I go on the race mix, the whole kennel is on it, including the puppies.
You target those 2 major events in Alaska, ONAC and Rendezvous. Tell us how you prepare your team and yourself physically and mentally for those races.
Physically, I'm pretty broke down, so I can no longer really work behind dogs anymore. What I do early on in my training is I start off training on a snow machine for the first 100 miles. And I start out with 12-mile-an-hour runs. I start out at 7 miles, and we build to 16 miles an hour within 2 weeks before we increase the distance. And once we increase the distance, then we go ahead and we drop them back to a 12, 14-mile-an-hour run, and then increase it back up again until we're ready to do another jump. And I do that for approximately about the first 100 miles, and I'd hope to go to sleds after that. At that point, our focus is at between 16 and 18 miles an hour. We start out 16 miles an hour till they get used to an increased distance, build them up to 18. Then when we make the jump again, we drop them back to 16 miles an hour and build them up in speed. But we try not to ever surpass 18 miles an hour ever in our training.
I know this year at the ONAC Open North American Championship, you had the biggest string of dogs of 22 dogs in front of your sled. Do you believe that having more dogs in front of the team gives you an advantage, or it was just the style of team you were planning to run?
What I do is it gives me more options throughout the race to where I can have a suitable team. Like I say, I'm a little old and I can't work behind the dogs, and I have a formula out there that you need 1 dog for every 16 pounds of body weight. So a 14 dog team, I can run with anybody at that point, because the accumulative fatigue and drag is not there against me. If I'm running less dogs, then that becomes an extreme factor. And I also like running extremely large teams because I love to be able to balance and get an efficient running team, a big team. It's a wonderful thing to watch, and it doesn't really look like a big team if everybody's in sync and just rolling really nice. And it's what I love to do, is just big. I'd run bigger teams if I could get away with this. Next year, if I'm really feeling bold, I'd like to beat Terry Streeper's record of 28 dogs and actually go off the line with 30.
That's very impressive. That's twice as much dogs that I have in my kennel, Eddie. That's pretty impressive. That is pretty impressive.
That actually, I have to really work on that, and I have to make sure that the team's balanced and each dog's matched stride for stride. So, trying to put 30 dogs together might be a little bit more of a feat than I can accomplish, but it would be fun to be able to do that once.
I was able to get some feedback during the ONAC. I guess they had it live. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to participate, but I was listening some of the feedbacks. And they mentioned you were singing behind your sled. Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
What do you sing, Eddie?
Whatever comes to mind. Songs by Linda Ronstadt, Jim Croce. I set tempo by what I sing and how I feel. And the other thing I find with singing and the constant voice contact with my dogs is they have a tendency to be focused on me. We have a constant contact instead of running silent. And then when I stop singing and I say something, I find that I get a much faster response out of the dogs on anything I do, rather than being dead quiet and saying something where it startles. Instead of startling a dog, they just flow with it. It's just part of the song. So I find that is a beneficial thing for me, and especially a large team when I'm trying to keep everybody focused on me all the time.
Eddie, I am real curious about these big teams. I'm a expedition / mid-distance musher, so our biggest teams are usually 14 or 16 dogs that we run. How long are your gangline sections? Are they 5, 6, 8 feet long? What?
Oh, I think it's 11 foot per section.
11 foot per section. So if you have 15 dogs at 30 dog teams, that's 165 feet long?
That'd be about right.
Holy cow.
If I do that, I won't see the front 10 dogs of my team a lot of the course.
Wow, that's amazing. Even with 22 dogs, that's quite a distance, about 55 feet or so. That's a long dog team, isn't it?
Yeah, and the way you run those dogs too is if you can't see the front end of your dogs, the key is you watch the ears of the dogs that you can see.
Okay. Yeah.
When you're running dogs like that, their ears are the first thing you're going to see that's going to change, and you know something's up.
Yeah, I think our listeners are really going to be fascinated by that because, most of the time their experience with mushing is what they see in the movies like 8 Below or Iron Will or something like that, a much smaller dog team, unless they've really jumped, full feet into the sport and watch videos of Rondi or whatever. That is very interesting to have such a big dog team for sure. Eddie, we ask our our guests the same question every time, and I know you've been involved with this sport for a long time, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say. And that is, if a person came to you and they're just getting started and they don't know exactly what they want to do, whether they run, canicross or open teams or Iditarod or whatever, what would be one piece of advice you would give that person if they came to you?
I would tell them what they want to do. First off is go see and visit an event and get involved with the dog club and start to get to know a few people and get an idea of what it is that you want to do. If you have the time, find somebody that's got a large program maybe and needs some help, and maybe take a year and work with them. And then it'll probably give you a better idea of exactly what it is that you might want to try and do.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice. Definitely take some time before you make that big decision, because it's tough to go back, that's for sure, to go from no dogs to 20 dogs.
Yeah, and one question I've been asked a lot by, non-mushers and other people, they ask me, what is the cost? And the only answer I ever give them is everything. And they look at me blankly, and I said, there's never enough money, ever. And everything you got will be poured into these dogs. And when they want to nail me down a little harder, I say, when I look at my dog kennel out here, we spend anywhere between $500 and $1,000 per dog a year.
Yeah.
And that's what your cost is going to be. That's why I say at an 80-dog kennel, it costs everything. Yeah.
Anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000 with your numbers. So definitely not a cheap thing to get into for sure. KP, anything else for Eddie before we go?
Eddie, what are your plans for next year? Tell us a little bit about that. What do you got in mind?
Well, what I did this year is we went into the ONAC extremely undertrained, so we treated it like a training run. Next year, I want to focus on putting a team together to race competitively, and of course, I want to get into the rendezvous. The rendezvous is my favorite of all races, and the thing I like about the rendezvous too is it's an easier event than the North American, so it's not that difficult to prepare for, because we get the speeds down. We're running a little bit more constant, and we're not really blazing a trail on that one. But
well, that's good. Hopefully, we will be able to participate too. We are hoping to have a better open season next year, and looking forward to see you at ONAC and Rendezvous next year. And good luck with your training program and with the summer that we have ahead of us. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, on behalf of my co-host and our guest today, this is Robert for the Dog Driver Show. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From First Paw Media, this is the Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Kourosh Partow. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media.